In February of 2023, I decided to become an airline pilot, and in May of 2023, I started flight school. 91 days after that, I had earned 7 ratings, and then just 23 months after I started flight school, I'd been hired by the largest regional airline in the United States. And in this video, I want to unpack my journey and share tips and lessons that I learned along the way, all with the hopes of equipping and inspiring you to replicate my success. Hi, my name is Trent, and I am the informal world record holder to go from private pilot all the way to airline pilot in just 23 months. And on this channel, I post videos to show aspiring pilots how to get to the airlines in the fastest way possible while spending the least amount on flight school. If you'd like to learn more, please visit flywithtrent.com/start. So first, let's talk about the flight school phase of my journey. The very first thing that I did was I took all the FAA exams for the flight certificates that I wanted to earn over a 3-week period prior to going to flight school. Now, for the private pilot exam, there's no hack. You just need to study the PHAC and just do a ground school. There's just really no shortcut for that. But for all of the other exams, by far the most effective tool to use is Shepherd Air. They pretty much they supply you with a piece of software that has pretty much all the FAA questions that are in the question bank. And if you follow their processes, you will end up basically memorizing almost all of those questions. So in my case, I would happily walk on into an exam, sit down, and usually about 30 minutes later, I would be done. My record was 19 minutes. That was for the CFI exam. So it is a powerful approach to taking all of those exams. Now, I attended a Part 61 school. You do have the option of attending a Part 141 school, but for the private pilot's license in particular, I would suggest that you avoid that. And I say that because of a story that one of my students shared with me. While one day we're in the cockpit side by side, we were just randomly talking about, like why did he switch from Part 141? And he said because it was really, really, really slow. Yes, on paper, you need a little less hours, but the problem is stage checks. And if most Part 141 schools are very popular, very busy, and there's a lot of flight cancellations. But in particular, these stage checks really, really slowed him down. He told me, he says, Trent, he says, every time I got ready for a stage check, I'd book it, but the soonest I could find an instructor who was available for a stage check was like 3 weeks from now. And the maximum amount of hours that I could fly after I hit the limit for the stage check was 5. And so oftentimes I'd be on the ground for 3 weeks waiting for that next stage check, and that just absolutely drove me bonkers. So that's a huge issue with the Part 141 approach. And also you have to do the lessons in order. And that can be a problem because weather might not be conducive to you doing the lessons in order. For example, if you are due to fly or to do stalls that day, but you've got a low ceiling and you can't get high enough to go practice those stalls, guess what you're going to be doing? Nothing. You're going to be sitting on the ground doing ground school, and you've lost a day of flying. With Part 161, you can do the lessons in any order you like. The syllabus can be completely customized, and you can save a lot of time. Now, in my case, I happened to find a flight school with the necessary ingredients for me to go as quickly as I did. Now, please don't ask me for the name of that flight school because they do not like to train private pilots. Their specialty is accelerated CFIs, and they don't like it when they mention their name on my channel because they get all these calls from what they consider to be the wrong people. So what I do recommend is either working with a local flight club or an independent CFI. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find an independent CFI, make sure you visit flywithtrent.com/start because there'll be a link on that page where you can learn more about how I can get you paired up with an independent CFI who will offer you accelerated flight training. Now, once I was in the school, I flew every day, even on weekends. Now, I was in the Midwest and it was summertime, so there was definitely some time lost to thunderstorms. At one point, I was actually stuck in my 91-day sprint. I was stuck on the ground for 3 weeks due to all of the thunderstorms. But you really need to choose, if you're going to work with a school, you need to choose the right school. Now, there's a very specific way to do that, and I actually teach that in a course called The Guide to Accelerated Flight Training. And again, if you go to flywithtrent.com/start, you'll find more information out about that. And then when I wasn't flying, I was also studying ground school every single day. So my time in flight school, it lasted 91 days, and I kept all of my check rides as close together as possible. So in my case, and for example, in my last 2 weeks of flight school, I did 4 check rides. Now I know that sounds impossible, but it's really not, because a lot of the check rides, the oral exam portion, it's the same stuff. So if you're getting your check rides really close together, guess what? You don't have enough time to forget all the things, so you don't have to relearn and restudy and waste a whole lot of time. Around the beginning of flight school, I joined the SkyWest Pilot Cadet Program, and then that enabled me to make sure that I got an interview, which I was able to do during the CFI phase, which I'll talk a little bit more later in this video. So a quick favor to ask you: according to Google Analytics, about 3/4 of the people that watch this video are not a subscriber to my channel. And if you would take just a second right now and click that subscribe button, it is a huge way to say thanks to me for making the content, and it helps the channel immensely. So if you wouldn't mind doing that right now, that would be terrific. Thank you very much. So now I want to talk about how my use of social media really played a significant role in how quickly I was able to get to that magical 1,500 hours in my logbook. So the very first thing I did, I had a channel with no subscribers and no videos about aviation. And I posted a video that says, "Is 53 too old to become an airline pilot?" Not having any idea what was going to happen. Maybe nobody would watch it. Maybe a bunch of people would watch it. I didn't have a clue. Much to my surprise, thousands and thousands of people watched that video in the first week. And that was a big aha moment for me. And it was a strong indicator that I needed to keep filming more videos, which is exactly what I did. The next video, I made a big, bold claim. I hadn't really accomplished anything yet, but I said, hey, this is my plan to become an airline pilot and earn 6 figures within the next 18 months, all starting at age 53. And that thing blew up, hundreds of thousands of views, and it kind of made me micro-famous in the aviation niche. So the channel became very popular, it grew very quickly, and I was also highly engaged. I read and replied to every single comment, and yes, when I had that viral video, that meant several hours per day just reading and replying to content, or to comments rather. So I launched a website called flywithtrent.com, and I also started collecting email addresses on that website. And doing all of this stuff on social media was key to my time as a CFI. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But if you don't want to do that stuff, you are going to need to do a lot of networking. You need to hang out at the airport as much as you can and start conversations with as many people as you can. This is how you're going to find students, and this is how you're also going to find, if you're going the independent CFI route, this is also how you're going to find aircraft to fly. So now let's talk about my time as a CFI. So I launched my CFI business just 2 weeks after I finished my 91-day sprint in flight school. Yes, I needed a couple of weeks off to recover. And thanks to my presence on social media, I was fully booked with a waiting list in just a month, which means I was flying a lot. I found aircraft owners who'd rent me their planes. And how I did that? I just talked to as many people as I could at an airport. And one person would introduce me to the next person, to the next person. And eventually I got introduced to these aircraft owners who really loved to rent out their planes because they bought them kind of as an investment vehicle that generated cash flow for them. I charged $75 an hour, which was well above market rates. Market rates in my market were about $50 to $55 per hour. But because my students were coming to me, they didn't really care about the price. Most of my students didn't even live in Boise. They came from out of state. They brought their RVs with them and they would live in their RVs. The whole thing was absolutely mind-blowing to me. When I asked these people, why'd you pick me? Like, why'd you come here? Don't you have CFIs in your own town? They all said pretty much the same thing. Trent, you proved that you could get there faster than anyone in history, and for that reason, I want to train with you. So as you might guess, all of my students came from my YouTube channel and my website, and that meant that I never had to go searching for students. I did run some posts on Craigslist, and I think I might have got one or maybe two students from that, but it was nowhere near the volume of inquiries that I received on my website and on my YouTube channel. I got my offer from SkyWest about 9 months after starting my time as a CFI. And that was a really cool story because I was actually doing a solo flight that day after doing training with students. So I would do that sometimes because I was trying to build all this time so quickly. And so I've got my headset on, I've got my phone sitting down on the seat over there face up, and it's Bluetooth to my headset. And it rings, and I look over as I'm on short final, or maybe just a little further out than that. I'm probably 30 seconds or 45 seconds away from wheels down. And I see the area code is 801, which I happen to know is where SkyWest is located. So I hit answer, and I was able to take the call through my headset. And the woman on the other end of the phone said, "Hey, congratulations. We'd like to offer you a job as a first officer. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." Literally, as my wheels were touching down onto the runway. So that was pretty cool and pretty surreal. Now, in my time as a CFI, as I mentioned, I was fully booked. So that meant I was flying about 100 hours a month. My best month, including solo flights, was 171 hours. And let me tell you, I don't ever want to do that again. That is a lot of hours in a month to be in an airplane. It was insane. So at 75 bucks an hour, thanks to the 3-hour training blocks every single day, out of which we would fly about 2.5 hours. So I was logging pretty much 8 hours a day, which is the maximum every single day, day after day. That meant that I was billing about $675 a day, which meant that I was making around $13,000 a month as an independent CFI. Now, some people say, well, if you were making that much money, why would you go be an airline pilot? Well, number one, I was going to enjoy being an airline pilot more than a CFI. And eventually my income from being an airline pilot would surpass the $13,000 per month. So I had no interest in continuing to be a CFI any longer than I needed to. By taking this approach, I was able to hit that magical 1,500 hour target, or what people refer to as ATP minimums, in just 12 months after starting my CFI business. And as I mentioned earlier, social media was absolutely key to my success. So now we enter the waiting phase. So thanks to hiring starting to slow down, I actually had to wait 9 months for a class date. And many of those months, I didn't even know if I was going to get a class date, how long it was going to be. So I was waiting a long time, and I got pretty nervous. I was filled with some fear for sure and some doubts, thinking, man, is this going to happen or not? And then in January of 2025, I got the call from SkyWest. They told me my class date was March 31st. As you might imagine, that was a huge relief. And so I headed off to class on March 31st. Now, unfortunately for me, I hit a medical issue in the middle of training class. So I did not get the opportunity yet to complete my training. I am recovering from that medical issue, and then I'll work on getting my first class medical back, and I'll go back to SkyWest and finish my training. So thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do click that like button. And if you have questions for me, I do read all of the comments. So go ahead and leave your question down in the comments and I will be sure and reply to it. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in another video soon. Bye-bye.